Welcome to the Nameless.
He kept calling me by someone else's name. It happened the third time I corrected him. I was already sitting on the couch across from his chair, hands folded the way I always did when I felt like I was being watched. The room smelled faintly of old books and lemon cleaner. He leaned forward, smiled the calm, professional smile, and said, "Tell me how that made you feel, Daniel." "My name isn't Daniel." I told him that. Again. He blinked, like I'd just said something mildly interesting, scribbled something in his notebook, and said, "Of course, I'm sorry. Go on." But when he said it, he didn't sound sorry. He sounded careful. Before all of that, my life had been quiet in a way I'd always appreciated. I worked remotely doing data entry for a logistics company, the kind of job where nobody ever asked questions as long as the numbers were right. I lived alone in a one-bedroom apartment above a dentist's office. The building was old, but solid.
You could hear the pipes knocking at night and the elevator whining through the walls. I liked those sounds. They reminded me that things were moving, that time was passing. I started therapy because of the memory gaps. They weren't dramatic at first. I'd lose track of a conversation or realize I didn't remember driving home. Once I found a grocery receipt in my pocket for items I didn't remember buying. Not strange items, normal things. Bread, coffee, apples. That was almost worse. It meant whoever I was when I wasn't there still shopped like me. My doctor referred me to Dr. Halverson, a therapist who specialized in dissociative disorders and memory issues. His office was in a converted townhouse downtown, the kind with narrow stairs and thick doors that shut with a soft, final sound. From the first session, he made me feel listened to. He nodded a lot. He asked open-ended questions. He never rushed. The name thing started on the fourth visit.
At first, I thought it was a slip. Therapists see dozens of patients. It made sense. But it kept happening. Always the same name. Daniel. When I asked him about it, he didn't apologize the way people usually do when they make a mistake. He paused, tapped his pen against the notebook, and said, "Does that name mean anything to you?" I said no. I was sure of that. He wrote something down. After that session, things started feeling slightly off, like the world had been shifted half an inch to the left. Small things. The receptionist didn't ask me to sign in one morning. She just smiled and handed me the clipboard like she already knew who I was. Another time, I found my apartment door unlocked when I was certain I'd locked it. I told myself I was tired, stressed. That was why I was in therapy after all. One night, I woke up at 3:12 a.m. to the sound of someone moving around in my kitchen. I lay there, heart pounding, listening. The sounds were slow and deliberate. A cabinet opening, a glass being set down. No rushing, no fumbling. Whoever it was moved like they belonged there. I didn't call out. I didn't get up. I just lay there, staring at the dark ceiling, waiting for the sounds to stop. They did, eventually. Footsteps crossed the living room. The bedroom door opened just a crack. I felt watched. Then the door closed again. In the morning, nothing was out of place. One glass sat drying on the rack by the sink. I told myself I must have gotten up and forgotten. That explanation was starting to feel like a blanket with too many holes, but it was all I had. At my next session, Dr. Halverson asked me if I'd been sleeping well. I told him about the kitchen. I tried to laugh it off. He didn't laugh. "Do you ever feel like you are sharing space with someone else?" he asked. The question made my stomach tighten. "No," I said. "Just sometimes it feels like I miss things." He nodded. "And when that happens, do you feel distressed by it, or does it feel natural?" I thought about the grocery receipt. the glass in the sink. "It feels normal until I notice it," I said. He wrote that down too. The next week, I found a folder on my desk at home that I didn't recognize. It was plain manila, no label. Inside were printouts of emails, my emails, sent from my address, conversations with my boss, confirming deadlines I didn't remember agreeing to. The tone was polite, efficient, familiar. At the bottom of the folder was a sticky note in neat handwriting. "You're doing fine. Don't panic." I stared at it for a long time. I didn't recognize the handwriting, but something about it made my chest ache, like trying to remember a song you haven't heard in years. I brought the folder to my next session. Dr. Halverson looked through it carefully, too carefully. When he reached the sticky note, he paused. "Where did you find this?" he asked.
"In my apartment," I said. "I didn't put it there." He leaned back in his chair. For the first time since I'd met him, he didn't look calm. He looked tired. "I want to ask you something," he said, "and I need you to answer honestly." I nodded. "Do you remember coming here for the first time?" I frowned. "Of course. My doctor referred me." He watched my face. "Do you remember the session before that?" "There wasn't one." He didn't respond right away. He closed the folder, set it aside, and folded his hands. "This is going to sound strange," he said, "but I need you to consider the possibility that your memory gaps are larger than you think." I felt a flicker of irritation. "That's why I'm here." "Yes," he said, "but I don't think you're aware of how far back they go." That night, I dreamed of sitting in his office, but the room was empty. No furniture. Just me sitting on the floor, while someone spoke from behind the walls. I couldn't hear the words, only the tone, gentle, firm. I woke up with the sense that something had been decided without me. Over the next few days, people started reacting to me in ways I couldn't explain. A barista asked if I'd cut my hair. A neighbor in the hall nodded and said, "Back again?" like I'd been gone somewhere. When I checked my phone, I found photos I didn't remember taking. Nothing dramatic, just pictures of sidewalks, clouds, my own reflection in dark windows. Always alone. At my next session, Dr. Halverson didn't let me sit on the couch. He asked me to take the chair instead, his chair. "I think it's time we talked more directly," he said. My mouth felt dry. "About what?" "About why I keep calling you Daniel." I waited. The silence stretched. "There is a patient I've been seeing for several years," he said. "His name is Daniel. He came to me after a traumatic incident. He experienced severe dissociation, memory loss, and identity fragmentation." I felt a cold spreading through my chest. "What does that have to do with me?" Dr. Halverson looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite place. Not pity, not fear, something closer to concern mixed with caution. "You started coming to see me 8 months ago," he said. "You didn't make an appointment. You walked into my office during Daniel's session and sat down." I laughed. It came out sharp and wrong. "That's not possible." "You knew details about his life," he continued. "Things I hadn't documented yet. You spoke as if you were remembering them, not hearing them for the first time." I shook my head. "You're saying I'm what? Imaginary?" "I'm saying," he said slowly, "that when you're here, Daniel isn't." "If I'm not real," I said, "then who's been living in my apartment?" He didn't answer. Instead, he opened a drawer and took out a small recorder. He pressed play. Daniel's voice filled the room. It was my voice. Same cadence, same slight hesitation before certain words. He talked about his job, his apartment above a dentist's office, the comfort of routine. He talked about the fear of disappearing. I don't want to go back to being just one person, the voice said. I feel safer when he's there. I felt something crack inside me then. Not panic, something quieter, like a door closing. I think, Dr. Halverson said gently, that you're a coping mechanism, a partition, a way for him to live without remembering. I sat there for a long time, listening to the recorder click off, the silence rushing back in. What happens to me? I asked. He hesitated. That depends on Daniel. I didn't go back to the apartment after that. I walked for hours.
The city felt different, like I was seeing it through a window. People passed through me without noticing. When I caught my reflection in a storefront, it looked slightly out of sync, like a video with bad buffering. That night, I found myself back in the therapist's office building without remembering how I got there. The door was unlocked. Inside, the lights were off, except for the glow from under his office door. I stood in the hallway, listening to two voices. One was Dr. Halverson's. The other was mine. I don't need him anymore, the voice said. I remember enough now. I pressed my hand against the wall to steady myself. The paint was cool and solid. I'm doing fine, the voice continued. Don't panic. I understood then who the sticky note had been for. The door opened. Dr. Halverson stepped out, startled to see me. Behind him, the office was empty. I think you should go home, he said quietly. I don't know where that is, I replied.
He didn't argue. After that, things became hazy. I remember sitting on a park bench as the sky lightened. I remember the feeling of being very tired, like I'd been holding myself together with constant effort and finally let go. Now there are days I feel solid. I wake up in the apartment, I go to work, I drink coffee. Everything lines up. But sometimes, late at night, I find a glass drying by the sink. And sometimes, when I close my eyes, I hear Dr. Halverson's voice calling me by a name that feels less and less like a mistake.